since many of you are new to my webinars, first of all, I just want to say thank you. It's really nice to have you here tonight, and I appreciate how much everyone has expressed their interest in this kind of thing, both through the group and through this webinar tonight. So I'm really super excited about that. I hope that this is something that I can continue with all of you over time, and I really, really hope that these things are beneficial. So I plan on doing these critiques once or twice a month. I'll also record them for those who can't participate live and post them to the group for viewing after the fact, because I know there's a number of folks tonight who wanted to be here and couldn't. So anyhow, that's just a little bit about the critique. Next, I just want to say welcome, and I truly am glad that you're here with me. So I've got people from all over, including different countries on the line tonight, some of whom are getting up at crazy times of day to be in this room. So I appreciate that very, very much. And I hope this is going to be fun. I'm glad you're on this journey with me. So first of all, just how does this work? How am I going to approach tonight and the success of critiques? Keep in mind, this is something that can be modified. So if you want something more or different or have some suggestions, I'm open. But how we're going to do it tonight is, first of all, like I mentioned before, tonight and every couple of weeks, I will do another one of these because I think it's helpful to always have your work reviewed by someone else. I'll come back to that a little bit more later, but I'll do these once or twice a month, and you can submit images via Facebook. And what I do is I look for those that have the CNC tag next to them. So whether you want the group to give you critique or whether you want me to, just put a little CNC in there, and then I'll review those and somewhat randomly choose some images for critique. I usually have time for about 4 or 5 in an hour because I like to spend a little more time on each one rather than just give a 2-second thought on 100 images. So anyhow, my type of critique, I offer a variety of things that we can do, but for these types of things, my critique usually includes tips, suggestions, possible processing ideas, and so forth. The one thing I really want to say, and this is so vital, my opinion is just that. It's one. There are so many opinions out there about photography. Please don't take mine as, gospel, so to speak. It is one opinion, and you are more than welcome to take it or leave it. And I think I hear some folks talking in the background, so I'm going to mute that. Again, you can unmute yourself if you have a question, or send me a chat message and I'll be able to respond to that. Okay, so again, mine is just one opinion. It's a thought. My personal experience with critiques is that look at the collective of what many people say about an image, and not just about one picture of yours, but about a portfolio of your images. One of the best experiences I ever had with critique, and this is why I'm a fan of it, is I took my work and submitted it to the North American Nature Photographers Association during one of their conventions. And they have top magazine editors, stock photography reviewers, professionals, the top of their game. These are people that are in the top of the industry around the country and world. And for, I think it was $60, you could have your portfolio of 25 to 30 images that were in a theme reviewed by one of these people. I actually did it with 6, and I figured it was worth the extra money to see the trend, not just one person's opinion of my work. It was fascinating to see how some people liked everything, and some people had ideas on certain things, and other people thought the images were perfect as they were. So you got a little bit of a flavor, but you really got an idea on what different vendors or companies or photographers or artists wanted and what they looked for, and it made you really think about things when you're doing your photography. And if I heard something 3 or 4 times by different photographers, that stood out more than just one thing, although those one things from one image from one reviewer were also meaningful. So again, I won't go through this every time, but I do want you to know that this is just one opinion. The other thing is these are designed to be helpful. Many of you, if you've ever been through a critique before, it can be scary. I don't want to sit there and bash your images. This isn't about an ego trip for me. This is about helping you. And I welcome others' thoughts and ideas as well. And you can put those in the chat comments. This is something designed to be helpful, and all of us can grow in our work. I just had my work reviewed by 4 different lead photographers, including the photo editor for Arizona Highways and several others recently. It's always a good idea to just have a checks and balances. You know, what are you doing? And where could you grow with it? So anyway, that's my soapbox on that, but I do welcome your participation throughout this, and I'll probably throw some questions out your way as well to chat back to me. And then again, just a reminder, please keep these communications thoughtful and supportive. Remember, we're all in this together, and photography is a very personal thing. I don't want to be harsh and judgmental. I want to support you. This is why you're here in this group. I want a caring, friendly, let your hair down, don't worry about, you know, little things. Just let's get some work out there. Let's talk about it. Let's grow with it. And anyway, that's how I feel about it. So let's go ahead and get started. And once again, if you want to chat with me, I'll say hello again. And I see some people can't hear anything. Thank you, Faye, for sending a note to folks. It would be something local on your computer, maybe your audio. Well, I can't, they're not going to be able to hear me anyway. So anyhow, Faye, thank you for supporting them. There's also information on the audio. Let me see if I can send that information out. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if for some reason an individual is having trouble with the audio, hopefully that information will help. So getting started here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Photoshop screen because I want to actually do some things, not necessarily in Photoshop, but I'm going to review them this way because for those who sent me the higher resolution images, I think this will display better than on a PowerPoint. So let me go ahead and mute everybody here. There we go. All right, so the first person that I have that allowed me to share, and thank you so much, Tim, is Tim Eddy, and I'm not using names unless they said it was okay. Tim, I loved this image, and Tim, are you on the line tonight? Can you unmute yourself and say hello? Not sure if you're able to join tonight. There you are.
I am here.
Hey, Tim, good to have you here, and thanks for being the first one. My goodness. All right. So do you want to tell us just a quick little snippet about this image?
I was just out looking for critters to shoot, and one of these things actually came up and stuck his head in my window. And so I got out and I started looking around and seeing these and just shot it. I don't know that I really had a plan or a vision for it initially, but they were there and I took the shot.
Awesome. So they were there and you were there and there you went. Did you do anything with your settings, or were you shooting more on auto, or do you even remember? It might have been a while.
Yeah, that was a while back. It was, I was shooting manual. I think I was probably zoomed out to about 300 meters. That's about all I remember. I can't remember what my were.
No worries. Well, thank you again for submitting. And first of all, I love the fact that all three of these guys are looking at you. So you've got this little, almost like a photo bomber in the background. I love that. I love that all their ears are up. So hard in wildlife to sometimes get both ears up and looking at you. And I always feel like one ear cockeyed looks a little indignant, and two ears pulled back looks like they're about to charge. So it's always nice when you can get these little faces. I also really love the fact that these two little guys up front here, the symmetry and the parallel with the two faces looking at you was a really nice moment to capture. I'm sure you probably had to wait a minute for this younger one to pop its head around and do something, you know, where they're both looking the same way. I don't know if you made a noise or what, but it really worked. The other thing that is nice about this and it looks like it was shot a little bit more earlier, or excuse me, in the middle of the day, and I can tell by the way the shadows are falling down here and the way the shadows are falling on the face and the light on the back that it was probably more midday. That can be tricky to shoot, but you got enough light in here, whether it's through the shot or through some post-processing, where I don't feel like one half of the face is completely black. You also don't have really dark stuff down in here, which can be tricky when you're shooting in top-down light, which is, I think, what was happening here. Maybe early afternoon, depends on the time of year, too. It looks like it's in Arizona or California. So a couple things that I would say, and keep in mind, you copyrighted this in 2014, so no doubt your skills have grown in 3 years, too. So some things I've talked about that I really liked about this, I love the way these guys all work together. Hopefully y'all can see my, you can see my little mouse moving here. I don't know if I can make that any clearer. Let me see here. Annotate. Yeah, here we go. Okay, I'll try to draw on here a little bit. So I like the fact that these two faces are where they are, and this little guy is poking his head out in the background. That's cool. If I were to shoot it again or post-process it, and I say this because I know you can't go back and shoot this moment, here are some things to think about for future moments when you shoot, because that's really what this is all about, is next time. I would try either in post-processing, or if it's possible to move yourself without startling the animals, I would try to maybe get this these telephone poles either out of your shot, or come in post-processing and possibly remove them. I say that possibly because some people like to do post-processing. Others feel like it's not authentic. That's your own choice. This is your own art. And unless you're entering into a contest or a magazine or something where they have very strict requirements about post-processing, other than that, I could honestly care less what you do. It's totally up to you. It's your art. Don't be limited by that if you can improve your audience's ability to connect with that image. I'm not saying add zebras where there's not, though if you want to do composites, you know, say it's a composite, but that's fine too. This is about your own journey, and I don't make judgments on which way people go in their journey. So that could be something to think about. The other thing right here is I would move downward a little bit to give a little more room for these feet. They're kind of cut off. The hooves are cut off a little bit, and that would be something that I think would help complete this image. If you couldn't maybe get them all in the frame, although there's some room up here, but if you couldn't, there is a rule, you know, and rules are made to be broken, right? But there is a rule in photography that talks about how we how we cut off subjects' appendages necessarily. So if you have to intentionally crop something, it's true for humans too. You never want to crop something at a joint, such as a knee or an ankle. Try cropping instead midway down. So, you know, halfway down the arm or the foot or the leg, or here, for example, on the top half. But I would not crop an image, or if you're composing in the shot, and this is true for portraits as well, right at a joint. It feels painful to people. They get a visceral reaction to that. So just a little something to think about. Other than that, I like what you've done. I think you could, I'm going to clear this out here. I think another thing that you could do that might help your image is to go and, let me get rid of this here. There we go. Is to go, and you could probably, whoops, you could probably go and even crop down a little bit on that sky. There's a little rule, if you will, in composition that your eyes go to the brightest things first, and then the darkest things. And where there's high contrast, it really likes to hang out there. So my eye typically likes to go where this backdrop is of the mountains and the sky. It's an important part of the image because it gives context, but I think it could be better by just going and cropping down in here. I still know there's a mountain back here, but it pulls my eye a little bit more into the mules or burros here. And you could also potentially get rid of, either by cropping here, one of those telephone poles, or if you like the wider look, you could go in, and I'm going to use my healing brush here for a minute. You could go in and try using healing brush in Photoshop And you can also use cloning. I'm just doing healing brush because it's pretty quick, but you could try to get rid of some of those. I'm doing a quick job of it. I realize there's still some remnants here that you might want to clean up a little bit. You may need to go into the cloning tool and okay, and then, you know, kind of clean that up a little bit more, but you get the idea. So that could be another thought of just getting rid of some of those telephone poles. But I do like that quite a bit overall. If you want, this is 3 years later again, so your skills have grown. If you want to even pull up those faces a little bit, one thing I like to do is add an extra layer by clicking on this layer button down here. I've changed the layer to overlay, which makes it a little more transparent, and I'm grabbing some white. And I'm going in at about 5% opacity, somewhere in there. And you could also just pull up slightly the face so it's a little bit easier to engage with. So it's not quite so dark on that shaded side. Pull up the face and the ears, just a hair. I'm just kind of lightly painting over that. And I love using a brush that's actually very soft. So I went over to my hardness tool and went to 0. And again, you can just play that up a little. So those are a couple thoughts to think about, but I love, again, the face, the connection right here. I mean, this could be, honestly, a picture unto itself, Tim. So if you went, and again, I'm just playing with this, but even this right here is pretty darn cute. So anyhow, that's my 2 cents on it, but I do like that. Do you have any thoughts or comments you want to add, either you, Tim, or from the group?
I love what you said. It's funny, as I started looking at it, I started noticing the telephone. Yeah, that was awesome. Thank
Hey, you're welcome. It's a cool subject, and I know that we can't go back and shoot the same thing, but hopefully these things will be things to consider in the future. And I welcome other comments. So does anyone else have anything to share or add with that? Faye said great picture, so thank you, Faye, for chiming in. I'll see if anybody else has any other comments. Joel said he agrees with the crop. Thanks, Joel. So I've got Idaho and Michigan represented in the comments. The faces are great. Yes, they are. All right, I'll watch those comments for a few minutes. And thanks, by the way, for chiming in, everybody. This is intended to be a group concept. And Faye says she thinks you could get 3 shots out of this. So Faye, I'm kind of curious what you're thinking about that. She goes out, let's see here. Someone said maybe square crop and get the 3rd burrow in, so we could try that. 1, 2, 3, and actually I'm going to go here to my square 1-to-1. There we go. So we could get a 3rd burrow in there. So that was Dawn's idea. And then Faye says she goes the face of the 2 and then the 3. So I think she was thinking similarly to this, and then, you know, going back to the original faces. Let me stretch that out a little bit. We'll still do a square crop, something like that. Yeah, I think so too. Don says 2 is better. And then Lisa Manifold said, I have a question. She loves the photo. There's a yellow line on the mountain's edge. What is it and how do you get rid of the line? Let me see here. I'm not seeing the yellow line. Is it just on my computer that I'm not seeing it, or does anyone else see the yellow line? I assume she's talking about up here, maybe this, but okay, no one else is seeing it. Lisa, it could be something with your monitor. I'm not sure. Okay, it could be an aberration. Someone said, I'm not sure. I'm going to zoom in, but I'm not personally seeing it. Chromatic aberration, perhaps. And it could be a difference in monitors. So let's keep that in mind too. Anyway, Lisa, if you have more thoughts on that, holler, and I'll be glad to go back to that. Okay. Hey, thanks for chiming in, everybody. Let's go to the next one here. And let me get rid of that crop. There we go. So this is one of my favorite subjects, the quail. I think these are Gamble's quail, female. This is an image that, and thanks for chiming in, everyone. So this one is of a Gamble's quail, and it looks like a semi-adult juvenile. So Gambel's quail grow quickly. They look like little floating leaves at first on the ground, little teeny tiny things, and boy, do they grow up quick. So anyhow, with this image, I don't know if the person's on the line, and if they are, if they want to chime in. Their initials are MW. And again, I'm happy to do this anonymously, but if there's something that you would like to chime in and say about the image, feel free to unmute yourself and talk about the image. Okay, so here are some of my thoughts with it. One thing with composition is that we try to look for what's called the rule of thirds. Let me get rid of this and go, there we go. So when we look at an image, one of the most first things you'll probably learn in photography with regard to composition. By the way, I am going to do a composition webinar on Thursday if anybody wants to join that one. But one of the things with composition is to think about the rule of thirds. And it sounds kind of trite if you've heard it a lot, but I think it's always good to have a reminder of it. It basically suggests that if you put this kind of tic-tac-toe grid on your screen, I'll try to zoom out a little more so you can see. If you put this tic-tac-toe grid on your screen, it divides the images up into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. And where you have these areas where the lines intersect, those are called PowerPoints. And typically we want to put our subject in one of those PowerPoints, and sometimes what I call the supporting actor. If you have the main actor and then there's a supporting actor, which is some other subject in your image, often it looks nice to put it in the opposite corner. But you want one to be the dominant and one to be, again, the supporting actor. So one of the things that I would do, first of all, I love this subject. So I'm going to get rid of this screen, the tic-tac-toe lines for a minute here, but I love the subject, I love the action, I love the light, and if you even look in closely, and I'm dealing with a smaller resolution of this image, okay? I pulled this one from Facebook. It's not a high resolution image, so when I zoom in, it's going to be a little pixely. So anyway, this right here is a little catch light, that white dot in the eye, and the baby looks like it's got a little bit of one as well. If I had the high resolution image, it would be more apparent. Those are all really nice things to look for in your wildlife images. So I love that you have that. I also love that this background is simple right here where the face of the bird is, and then you've got these nice simple bushes in the background. If the bird were positioned up over in here for some reason, this background's a lot more cluttery, and that would be hard to separate the bird from the background. Let's look a minute before we talk about composition and cropping at where my eye goes. So I mentioned earlier that your eye goes to the brightest things first and then the darkest things, typically in an image. And if there's high contrast, if bright and dark are juxtaposed together, that's like eye candy. Your eye really wants to go to those areas first over everything else in just about every case. So when I look at this, my eye does go to the subject, which is great, but then quickly it starts to go to other areas. So if I'm looking at this here, let me get out my pen. All right, if I'm looking at this, my eye, sees the birds, but it goes to two things. It goes to this bright spot down here, which is juxtaposed to this dark shadow. And then for me, and holler if anybody feels differently, but for me, it also sees this, I think, branch or fence post or whatever it might be in the background. After that, it also goes to this very large, bright object over here. So I see this, but then my eyes quickly pulled away by these other things. And it's somewhat hard to get my eye back on the subject. So what you want your image to do to keep a viewer engaged is to have them see the subject. And then maybe have them travel around the image in a pleasing way and keep coming back to that subject. In other words, it's almost like being, the subject is a magnet. You kind of pull away, you look around, then you come right back to that subject. And with this one, I would like to, and I do come back, but I think a lot of this information out here, outside of this subject, is not necessary for the image. So I don't know what lens choice there was. This might have been as close as you can get. I get that entirely. So let's talk about, first of all, if this was as close as you could get with your image, with your lens that you have, without cropping. A couple things that we could try. I'm going to go back to my crop tool here. And if you look at the rule of thirds, I want to evaluate each side of the image. Which one is more interesting to me? Is it this side over on the left or the stuff on the right? The other thing I want to look at is the direction the bird's facing. So right now it's facing towards this reddish, rusty colored rock. If the bird were to turn its head slightly and look at you, or look back towards what would be my right if I'm facing the bird, that would be awesome. So what you might do next time you're in this situation is wait for the bird to look towards, it would be its left or my right. And what that's going to allow you to do is take this, and I'm going to pull down. We're going to put that bird right about in that PowerPoint area. I'm going to move it a little bit over. And now if I crop it, it's in that third. There's the third again. So this bird follows, and you can move it a little bit one way or the other, but generally speaking, this falls on that rule of thirds for the vertical. And the PowerPoint is right about where the face is. So one of the rules with wildlife photography, and again, rules are meant to be broken, but one of the rules is you want your subject to be able to move and have room in front. So as opposed to this bird facing outward and to the left, if I just waited a second longer, and I don't know if that's possible because I know how quail are and they scurry along and you're just getting the shot that you can get. So know that I appreciate all of that. But if they happen to look just a little bit more towards you or to the other side, that could be really pleasing for having them looking into the image instead of running away. It's not horrible in this case the way I've cropped it, but that's something I'm thinking about. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back here to the full image. You might say, well, then why don't you crop so that they're running off the frame, or that they're not running off the frame and they have room to grow? So this is another option. But the only thing is, and I actually see how much more pleasing it looks to have them look in the frame, but I've got this big rock to contend with, and that keeps taking my attention away. I could crop really, really tight, but now I'm dealing with other issues regarding how many pixels are in this image and the quality. So once you start cropping down to 30, 40, 50% of your original image, it can really make that image not look very good beyond a maybe Facebook publication. So got to think about where it ultimately will go. So in an ideal world, or the next time you're in one of these situations, look for the more pleasing background of the two. Wait for that animal to turn if it can. And I realize I'm talking about hypotheticals here, but I'm just giving you ideas for the future. And then I would do something like that, or you could even go a little bit tighter in. And now you've got this kind of panorama style image. The bird would look a little bit that way, and this background's a little more pleasing. So if I really wanted to play up a little bit with this, I could then go in, and I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to go and grab my clone tool over here. I'm going to clone at 100% up at the top, and I would get rid of, you want to find matching material, but not have it look like it's been repeated. Cloning can be a little tricky. I'll zoom out so you can see a little bit better. But I'm going to get rid of some of that really dark stuff back there. And then I'm also, and there's a few ways you can do this. I'm doing it one way. But I'm going to get rid of, I'm going to get rid of some of this shadow down here. And I don't know if I get rid of it 100%, but I might subdue it a little bit. I'm doing a very quick job because this is for just demo purposes. I'm not like preparing this as a final image for a competition or anything. But I would get rid of some of that shadow, and then I might just exchange it out for, I'm going to go to an overlay layer. I'm going to go to black over here. And again, there's a few ways to do this. I'm just doing it one way. And I'm going to put a little bit of a vignette down here, darken that up, darken the background. And I might darken this a little bit more. And then you can lighten up the bird a little bit just to get your eye there. And again, I'm just playing a little bit. I might want to play with this some more, but I like the idea of getting your eye towards that bird and subduing some of this background. One other thing that judges will look for are any light spots on the edge of your image. So right now I have this area up here that's very light, if you can see that, and I might want to get rid of that or reduce that. And again, it all depends on what you're using this image for. If it's a context and you can't change pixels, well, then it's a contest and you can't change pixels, so you won't be doing this. If it's going on your living room wall, I don't care what you do with it. Oops. Come on. Get rid of that. There we go. So that's just something to think about. I'm always looking for things that get my eye away from my subject. So those are just a few things, but I am open to what others might have to say about this particular image. So, and again, while people are typing, there's some really strong things. Clean background behind the bird, both in the far back and in these grasses here. So it was a good choice to shoot the bird at that point. I like the light. I like the catch light. I like that there's two. It's often hard to get two of something, especially wildlife in a subject, so I really like that. I like that these rocks pull in some of the colors from the bird. We just don't want to emphasize them as much, and we want to use, just to recap, that rule of thirds will certainly be helpful to you in composing a little better. Question on how to make the bird sharper. So right now I'm dealing with a Facebook-sized resolution, so you're probably seeing some pixelation because of that. Let's pretend for a minute that that's not the case. What you could do, and I'm a big fan of using a very selective sharpening process, I am going to grab my lasso tool over here, and I'm going to draw a lasso around the bird. Doesn't even have to be the whole bird. Whoops, let me change the feathering here. You can feather, there's this tool up here called feather, and you can feather that so there's a little bit of a gradient, so there's not a line of demarcation between where you sharpened and where you didn't. It kind of gradually fades away. And then I'm going to circle that bird. I'm doing just a rough job here. And then I can go up in Facebook, my goodness. I can go into filter, sharpen, and then I like unsharp mask, which makes the unsharp parts of the image look a little sharper. And then I usually don't do more than 100%. And radius, I usually don't do more than 1. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that would be a way to make that a little sharpener. And sorry if you hear my cat in the background. He's coming to say hello. So anyhow, again, that's going to make it look really sharp. See this pixelation? On a low resolution image or one that you've cropped up a lot, and again, this is low resolution because I pulled it off Facebook, sharpening may make it look worse. So if I undo that sharpening, you can see how that pixelation goes away. There it is. And then there it is gone. You can see how that makes that image not look as great with the sharpening. But someone asked how to do it, and then meow, Joel, yes. Someone asked how to do that. So that's just a thought on that image, but I'm open to any other comments that you might have. Okay, so then let's take the next one, and feel free and still chime in, anyone. This one is a bird here, and we've got a northern shoveler, and then it looks like, I think I have a marbled godwit in the background. So anyhow, this bird, ducks are, I'm going to say this, ducks are tricky to photograph. They have these odd shapes, they're hard to compose well, and a lot of times I feel like duck shots are almost always just, you know, portraits, right? There's the duck in the middle of the frame, and it's kind of hard to compose creatively with a duck. So I want to talk about this one because I think we have some real opportunity. First of all, I'm going to assume that this is as far out as the lens that the photographer was using could zoom, and or that the photographer liked some of the background and liked the fact that there was another bird in the background here and so forth. So one of the rules, and again, rules are made to be broken, but one of the rules that I tend to think about is what is most interesting in my background. So we have a subject already. That's great. You know, nice duck, pretty light. What's my foreground and background doing, and how does that enhance or detract from my subject? So what I'm seeing right now is all of this very interesting stuff So I've got interesting layers here, 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 wonderfully rich layers, another layer here at the water line, and then I've got a lot of kind of just water here. So one of the things that I might do is work with these layers and do more of a panoramic, since I can't get real close to the bird, and or maybe I like the environmental shot. So I'm going to go back to my cropping tool, and instead of cropping in, I'm going to first crop up. And if you can see the rule of thirds showing up on this image, I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit more. You can start to see that I'm aligning these lines with layers within the image. So first, if I just crop here, there we go, I have gotten rid of some of that uninteresting water. And not that the water's bad, but half the frame with it isn't as compelling, and it can make my eye feel like I'm lost, as opposed to this where it kind of helps me focus. The other thing that I can do is use this grid, and I'm just clicking on the corner of this in Photoshop, and I'm looking to see if my horizon is even or whether it needs any correction. And I think it needs just a hair of tilting. I'm looking at the top kind of grid there, and I'm just moving it so that my water line looks a little more even, and then I'll recrop. And now you can see I've got a more even water line. It was just ever so slightly off kilter. And sometimes you can even have a level, your camera can be level to the horizon, but the way the shore works, or if you're on a hill, or wherever you're shooting, sometimes a hill can be deceiving, and it looks like in a picture that you're the way you were holding your camera was crooked, when actually it's the hill. So sometimes you're even correcting when naturally it was that way, but when you put it into an image, in a two-dimensional image, it just looks funky. So I really watch those horizons. All right, so now we're here, and I think instantly we have some improvement. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in, because I like several things in this image. I like the duck. I like the Godwit in there. And I'm going to go back to rule of thirds. And although I'd probably like this intersection, let me zoom out a little. Though I'd probably like this intersection right about where the eye is in the bird, it's not bad. If I pull in any more to get that there, now I've really got this Godwit in an awkward spot. And it looks like he's about ready to, fall off the edge of the image. So I don't love that. If he wasn't there, and or I could get rid of him and just have the duck, then I think that works a little bit better. But because we have that Godwit, I want to leave a little bit of space. So it's your choice. And I'm going to just show you quickly by getting rid of that Godwit just for a moment. Sorry, Godwit, but you're going to go there. I've cropped him out for a moment, or cloned him out, I mean. And now if I bring that in, whoops, I'm going to pull the horizon down a little bit. And again, the rule of thirds is as a suggestion. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's one way. Now, I'm going to go back, because I kind of like, sometimes you play with it a little bit and see what works. I almost like that better. Let me pull this down a hair. Yeah, I kind of like that better. So I've got some layers in my image. I've got the duck roughly in that rule of thirds, and I think that works a little bit better. That's assuming we don't have the Godwit. I already showed you a moment ago what the Godwit looks like. So if you like the dude in the back, as someone said, well, then we can bring the dude back. Give me a second. There we go. And then I'm going to crop back in here for the dude and the duck. There we go. Now I've got the two. So the next thing that I would mention, and it's tricky when you are, and I'm also dealing with a Facebook resolution image here as well, but I'm looking at this duck, and I'm going to take my dropper. I'm going to put my dropper on these feathers. And when I do, you'll see that it shows up as 100% white over here. There's no detail left in these feathers. There's lots of, more, and I realize we're dealing with a faraway image and a low resolution, but typically things that are 100% white in an image, as this is, You know, I can click in here and that dot is always in white, pure white. FFF, if you're looking at the hexadecimal code. There's no detail left. So if you were closer up to this duck and photographing it, and you still had 100% white there, I wouldn't be able to see the feathers and so forth. It just looks pure white. So that's one thing that, you know, a judge might ding you a little bit on, and you might want to play with your exposure. It's tricky with birds like this because you've got really dark things and really bright things all in the same bird. Same with mature bald eagles, Canada geese, black-necked stilts. You've got, you know, Arctic terns. You've got blacks and whites adjacent to each other, or really dark and really bright things, and that is tricky. But just know that's something to think about. You may want to play with your exposure, but I'm going to take this as is. And I'm kind of showing you a theme tonight. This is one way to play with your image. I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to change it from normal to overlay. And then the other thing that you can do, go grab your little brush here, and I'm going to keep my hardness at 0 so that it's a soft edge, not a hard edge at the edge of the brush. So 0 looks more like this, and 100% would look more like this, very sharp edges on my brush. So I want it 0. I'll leave the opacity at 10 and we'll see how it works. And I'm just going to play with black and white. I'm not adding color. I think the color is nice here. It doesn't need to be saturated anymore. But I can tone down certain things, and I can change the size of my brush by using my bracket key. And I can bring back a little detail here if I want to. So maybe I like that water's edge and want to use that as a leading line a little bit. I'm not doing it harshly, but I'm just playing up I'm actually selectively playing up contrast here, if you're wondering what I'm doing. And I could do a little bit back in here to just give a little bit more depth. I don't really want to do anything with the water down here because that's pretty defined as it is. And then I can go and I can get my white, and I can also do the same. And I'm doing this really quickly. I would do this more and spend more time on it if I was going to hang it on my wall. And I would also use the higher resolution version. But I can also I'm just emphasizing some of those layers and some of the highlights in those grasses. I can also tone down a little bit the lightness on that godwit and give him a little more detail because he got a little washed out there. And all I'm doing is adding the black in very subtly. You always want to make sure you do this on overlay, because if I did it on normal, see how different that looks? It looks terrible. Overlay is what you want your layer type to be, and it makes it a lot softer. So those are just some ideas that I'm sharing with you and ways to think about your image. So anyone else have any thoughts on that one? Okay, no one's typing anything. Oh, good, wonderful. Thanks, Joel, for being so active in here. And Stacy, thanks for the comment. I like the little dude in the back too. Can I touch up the white on the duck? If I did, wonderful question, by the way. If I did, let's say I took my black overlay and I painted on the duck. First of all, it really isn't going to show up very well when I'm using that light overlay. Keep in mind, there's no data here. I could go to 100% opacity on my overlay layer, and I can paint on here, and there's no data any longer. See, I can paint on the brown, and that's what happens to the brown because there's some data there to change. But there's really nothing I can do here. The other option would be to go to the image itself and go to my burn tool and burn the highlights. But even if I did that at 100%, now it's just going to be gray. And you say, well, what about not 100%? Okay, I'll go to 19%. It's just going to look muddy. So white, if there's no data there to begin with, as opposed to areas on an image, let me see if I've got one. I'm going to use this eagle for a second. This eagle, even the places that look white, if I were to grab my dropper and pick on, I'll try to find one of the whitest parts of this image. See how it's still not quite white? I'm clicking on several different areas. Look at this color patch over here. You think this is a white head, but look at all the different color that I'm getting out of that. So if I were to take my burn tool and burn the highlights down, there's data there. Not that I'd want to do that with this, but there is data to work with here where I could tone those down. Similarly, I'm going to get rid of those for a second. Similarly, if I went to a overlay layer and painted on it, whoops, overlay, and I painted on it at, let's just say 6%. All right, if I did that with black, I can paint on these areas and bring back some detail where it's a little bit lighter, and that works. I might have to paint over it a few times, but that also works. Similarly, if I went to Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, which I haven't even talked about tonight, but if I did that, one of the options that you can do is go to this highlights section and pull down the highlights. And I'm going to do them dramatically so you can see, but if I zoom in on this eagle, come on eagle, there we go. If I zoom in on those details, you can see me pulling down the highlights. There's still detail there. Now this bird is pretty far away, so by the time you zoom in this much, it's a little on the soft side, just because there's, you know, environment and atmosphere, and, you know, I'm zooming way, way down in. But you can see how I can pull the highlights all the way up or pull them all the way down, and there's still feathers and detail here. So that's what I'm talking about when you're shooting something that's not fully white. So let me go back to this other image here. Whoops, come on. Come on, Doc. There we go. So I can't do much with that because we've lost all the detail. And that was a wonderful question. So someone said, how about cropping out the light edges at the top or increasing the amount of water in the picture? All right, so let's try that for a minute. So if I crop out the light areas, if I crop it to here, there's how that would look. I could, and I'd have to go all the way back to add the water, but I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat here for a minute. Let's just say I want to add more water, just because I don't want to go all the way back to the beginning of this image, because I've done so much editing it already. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, Content Aware, and it should fake all that water in there for me pretty well. There we go. So that's how that would look if I added more water. Let's see, that was from Rob Raymond, who had asked that question. So, you know, it's, again, it's a different look. You could do it, but I'm sort of feeling like this, for me personally, I feel like the blue water is taking a lot of my attention. It has a lot of weight. So hence the reason why I cropped it more, so it allowed the bird to be on the rule of third. But you could still do that and see if you like that. So again, everybody has their own taste, so I can appreciate that you might want that. Yeah, someone said try duplicating the image, setting it to overlay at 10% to 15%, create a mask and paint out what you don't want. That is certainly an option. Again, there's multiple ways that we can kind of accomplish this, and I may do some Photoshop tutorials in the future as well, but that might be a way to kind of pull that, you know, play with the lights and darks here. But no matter what we do, this duck white, we can't fix that because there's zero detail left. If I printed that out, the paper would just be underneath it. There's no color to be had there. But what you're saying, John, might be addressing a little bit of a different thing. All right, so let's go to the next one that I have here. This one is the raw image that was sent to me. So, and I happen to know where this is because one of our folks who took my Magic of Alaska workshop sent it in to me. There's this old boat graveyard in Homer, Alaska, and it's just kind of a fun place to shoot. So this is one of the images from that. I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to go and not crop that. I'm going to duplicate this layer here. All right, so what can we do with this, and what would I do differently? So one of the things that I would do, and I'm going to see if I can fake it here using Photoshop tools. I love this old boat, but I'm feeling like the boat, and it might be the limitation of the lens, and I know for a fact that when you're photographing this boat, there's not a lot of room to back up from where we're standing right here, so it could be a limitation of the lens. But I want to have just a little bit more breathing room with this boat. So what I might do, and I'm going to try to imitate it in Photoshop, but I don't know if it'll work quite well. But I'll try Edit, Fill, Content Aware Fill, it may pick up pieces of the boat again. So sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. But let's see here. There we go. Oh, not too bad. All right. So we have a little bit of kind of funkiness in the grass here. I'll see if I can fix it quickly with cloning. Content aware fill is great. It's not perfect, but it is pretty good. So I'm doing that quickly. And then let's see here. If I look at the boat, there's a few little details here that would need to be cleaned up. But again, I'm not going to spend all my time as a Photoshop lesson here, but you get the idea what I'm kind of looking for. I want, clean. I don't want funky cropping, and I'm not doing a very good job on this because it's really quick that I'm doing this. So anyway, let me zoom back out for now. And yes, there's a bunch of junk in the background. And it's really hard when you're standing here photographing these boats. You can't get down right next to them because it's private property. You kind of have this limited sidewalk that you can walk up and down. So, and I think, Faye, you made a comment here, and thank you for submitting this. Would you like me to talk about how we could maybe get rid of some of that junk, like more like a Photoshop kind of thing, or what are your thoughts? Go ahead and chime in, either speak or type. She's probably typing here. So while we're doing that, one of the things that I would also consider doing, the sky is pretty dominant. I might pull down just a little bit because that extra sky really wasn't helping anything. Okay, she's on her phone. So I think, yeah, she said, how could I clean up the picture? So this, I'll also talk a little bit about Photoshop in here. And my cat's meowing again, so I apologize if you can hear it. So one of the things that I see back here is this old bus. And some people may say that adds character. Other people may see it as a distraction. I'm going to go with distraction. And anyway, I'm going to try to pull that out of here. So what I have is not a whole lot to work with over here for content that I would want to pull in for this this bus. So sometimes you can look at a sister image. So if you took 2 or 3 or 4 images of this boat, you could borrow some of this material over here that might be on another sister image and use it in this one. So I don't have a sister image, but that's one thought that I had. Given that we don't have a lot, one of our other options would be to try content aware fill, although I have a feeling it's not going to be awesome, but you never know. Content aware fill is one of those things. We go up to edit, fill, content aware fill. Sometimes it surprises me. Other times it's like, oh, that looks like heck. So see, that isn't really helping us at all. It didn't really fill with the stuff that we need. So I'm going to undo that. And we may have to go and do this by hand, which could take a while, but it's not impossible. I'm using my clone tool. I'm using it at 100%. I'm getting rid of this house because I don't want to keep cloning the house. But you've got to watch so you don't have a lot of repetition. And that's one of the struggles when we don't have a lot of content to work with here. So I'm going in, and I can try to clone this, but it would be a lot easier if we had a sister image to work with. But you get the idea on what I'm doing. Okay. And so you really have to kind of work this a lot because it's very easy to have it look cloned and copied. And, the pine tree is, there's a pine tree every little, the same exact distance away from one another. Or the beach has these same exact, dimples in it. It's very easy to have a picture look cloned. So again, you really got to be careful. You got to grab content. And every time I go over to one of these different areas to clone content, I hit my Alt key, and I'm varying where I am doing that because I don't want it to look repetitive. And you'd have to spend some time here. But it can be done. It just is going to take some time. And then you got to be careful because now I've just cloned the beach up a hill, which that doesn't work. So I'm going to go back, get some more beach here. And continue on with this. And again, I'm doing a quick job here because, I could be here for 3 hours doing this. So I realize there's better cloning that can be done but for the sake of time, I'm trying to do a medium job at this to give you an idea. Then we'd have to go in with this dirt over here and get rid of the bus and really spend some time. I could also look at cropping it out to a certain point, but then we've got the same problem we had with the boat before of we're going to crop right up to the edge of the boat, and that's not going to look great either. So again, you have to kind of play with it, and I'm doing a really quick job of this for the sake of time, but we could get that bus out of there. All right. And again, there's a couple different ways to go about it. You can use healing brush in different ways. You can use cloning. I could grab a whole section of land and copy and paste it over. But for now, I'm doing it really quickly. It's going to look kind of funky for the moment. Give me some time here. I'm doing a crappy job right now just to fill it in, and then I can fine tune it later. If I were doing this for real, I would spend more time. Let's get that shoreline fixed. And follow the same line with that beach. Let's fix this wood that I kind of went too far over on. And I may have to adjust some things, but there's the broad strokes view of getting rid of that bus. And now you don't have that distractor. So here's the before. There's the after. Okay. And then I would do the same thing with some of these other distracting elements. So get rid of, you know, these things in here. And sometimes you have to zoom in really close and go with a really fine brush and, you know, go in and get rid of some of this stuff. But it is doable. It just is going to take you some time to do it and do it well. And then find, you know, some sample material that looks like where, you know, whatever you're cloning out, you want it to look similar to what it's nearby. So grab samples that are close and then work with it. Now, I don't know, and I'm not going to finish that for the moment, if every piece of junk needs to be out of there, because it sort of tells a story. So you have to decide what things go and what things stay. This doesn't bother me so much. Like this one did over here that I'm starting to get rid of because it merges with my subject and is a little distracting. But the other one, you know, you might choose to keep or keep one thing and get rid of something else. So that's one thing I would do. And then the other thing here, I might just, I could do a couple things. I can put a soft vignette. And I don't like vignettes that you can actually see. I like the ones that you don't know that are there. So I could play down. I'm using my black paintbrush here. And I can go a little bit stronger. And I'm just using overlay. And I could play down that down there. I don't even know if you can see that all that well with, you know, with depending on the monitor that you have and so forth. But I might play down that part. I might also grab my white brush. Sorry, my computer is slowing down. That's why I'm not seeing it so much. And how it's all filling in. Probably more than I wanted now. So bear with me a minute here. I'm going to fix that. I think my computer was slowing down. There we go. Okay, let me get rid of that here as soon as my computer catches up with me, because that looks terrible. All right, so let me change that opacity then, you know, to something a little more subtle. The other thing that you can do is go in if this is too dark where the boat is on the bottom, because we were shooting, you know, Alaska, it's light out like 23 hours a day. You could go in and lighten up ever so slightly, bring out the shadows down here. Or you could go into your Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw and pull up some shadows there just so I can see some more detail in the boat. The other things, and again, I'm doing this quickly. The other thing, I'm going to flatten this for a minute just so we preserve what we have and make a duplicate layer. I'm going to go into Filter, Camera Raw, or you could do Lightroom, whichever you prefer. The settings and the tools are basically the same, just in different places. But you could go in and, again, you could pull up the shadows like I had talked about. That might help a little bit. Or what I like to do instead of broad strokes pulling up shadows, I like to grab a brush. I like to, I like to then just pull the shadows up and then paint where I want to pull those shadows up so that I'm not flattening out the image everywhere. I'm just wanting to add some detail. So that's my preference typically for pulling up shadows. So we can pull some up in there. And if it's not enough, you can do it again in certain darker spots and give yourself a little more detail. The other thing that I like to do is go in and go over to some of the effects and try the, dehazing. Sometimes that can make it look a little bit more of a pop to it, if you will, especially in the background. So that might be something you could do. And don't give up the idea of converting to grayscale, because this could be a cool black and white image, and then playing with your color sliders. So as you play with these different color sliders, it will add more or less contrast to your picture. I know there might be a little bit of a lag when I'm doing that from when you see it, but I'm just playing with different sliders to get an idea. So the black and white could be very fun as well. So let me look at some questions here. Dehaze is great for removing fence blur. That's, yeah, if you're shooting through a fence and you have a little bit of that blur. Someone says, do I dehaze on import, and that they like the black and white. For me, I don't know if you call this old school or just my school, but I don't use Lightroom per se, and I don't necessarily, I use Adobe Camera Raw typically. It's just what I've been using, and it's what I continue to use. The guts behind both are the same. The processes and things that you can do with your workflow are a little different between the two. But I usually look at all my images and I select ones that I specifically want to work with, and then I pull them into Adobe Camera Raw, or in your case it would be Lightroom, and then make my treatments. I don't do a lot, and this could be my limitations in knowing Lightroom because I don't spend time in it. I don't do a lot on import, if you will. I really am more of a one-at-a-time image person because I pick the very best composition and I work with that image. I'm not doing a lot of broad processing, like if you were doing event photography or weddings or things like that. I hope that makes sense, but yeah, Joel, thank you. If someone else wants to clarify that better in Lightroom, be my guest, because it is not my, it's not my strong suit, because I just have chosen not to use it, although I think it's a great tool. It's just something I haven't gotten into because I've already used Adobe Camera Raw so much. Okay. So that's a thought. I would consider doing black and white. Other than that, I would maybe just do a few little small tweaks to this image. I'm going to pull that back in after it added those treatments. All right, so there's the before. I'll let that sit for a minute so it can transfer to everybody. There's the after. So I just pulled up a few shadows. Some of these clouds have lost some detail up here because they went pure white. That's one of the reasons why I think black and white could work well there. But I would probably get rid of this little orange thing down here. I don't know what it is, but I would just get rid of it. And then maybe pull up this shadow in here. I'm starting to look now for the details. Where is my eye going? What does it stumble on? Is it something I want it to stumble on? So I might pull up these shadows here. I would probably do it back in Adobe Camera Raw, but I'm going to do it quickly here. I would pull up those shadows because that seems to make my eye want to stop there, and I don't like that. So I'd get rid of that shadow, and I'd do it better than I'm doing it now, just for the sake of time. I still might pull up some of the shadows in this ship a little bit more. I like seeing that detail, and it bothers me that I can't. And then decide how much more of this junk you want to get out. This thing here, this little, I don't know what it is, it looks like a ladder. That's actually part of the boat, but I almost find it a little distracting, so it might be something you want to consider getting rid of. There's high contrast here, and my eye keeps going here, and it almost looks like something's behind the boat rather than on it, but I do think it's part of the boat. So, you know, I'll leave that choice up to you, but those are my thoughts. Maybe finish cleaning this stuff up back here, and that's probably what I do with that. And then Stacy asked, oh shoot, there we go. Stacy asked, how is Adobe Camera different from Nikon DX? Oh no, it's not a dumb question, Stacy. So Adobe Camera Raw is just another processing tool, just like Lightroom or Photoshop. It tends to be more of a broad strokes processing tool, although you can do some fairly refined things in it. It's almost like a first pass tool. Some people only use that. Some people only use Lightroom. Some people use them, either of those tools, as kind of broad strokes before they go into Photoshop and do some really refined things. Some people don't use any. They just open it up and pretty much do everything in Photoshop. It's really a personal preference, and it's not a dumb question. I didn't understand what Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom and all those things. I didn't understand what those were either at first. So and if somebody else wants to say more about it, go for it. The one thing I will say about Lightroom is that it does give you a wonderful way to archive your images. And that's actually part of the reason why I haven't used it, because I'm so overwhelmed with my archives now. The thought of doing that for Adobe Lightroom is a little bit like I probably need a team of people and a lot of money to hire it done, because I don't know where I'd ever find the time to do that with all my archives. So anyway, if someone else has more to say, feel free and chime in. We all can help each other. Okay, last image. Oh, we're at 7 o'clock. Maybe we don't have time for that last image. I'll do it very quickly. The only thing I was going to say, and this is one that I pulled up for instruction purposes. This is one of mine, but again, going back to that rule of thirds, you don't always have to shoot wildlife up close. I see a lot of people always wanting to get close, and it's sometimes impossible to do. So I shot this one, and I put the eagle over on the left third, and then we can play with how you want that eagle to show up. Do you want it like this, where my foreground takes up 1/3 and the backdrop is 2/3? Or do you want the backdrop as 1/3 and the foreground is 2/3? It kind of gives you a different feel. But I would play with that, and then the other thing that I would do is get rid of a couple of these little white things over in the corner. I'm going to make this really quick for you, and then we can go. I'll get rid of these. I'll get rid of this one because they're distracting. I'm looking for distracting elements here, things that my eye gets stuck on. All right, I like that there's other things in the image, but the really bright things my eye can get stuck on, and they're tripping points in the flow of my eye around the image. So I'm looking for that. Even this dark green area here, that's a tripping point. And so I might want to lighten it up a little bit, make it match with the rest of the image so that it's not so much of a tripping point, or crop it out, or clone it, or whatever. But those are a couple of things that I would do. So that's if I needed a nice panel of this eagle. Of course I can crop in more, but again, I'm sort of defeating the purpose of these environmental shots, which I've really enjoyed shooting more of. So I really like more of this panorama look. I think it just gives you just something about the animal in its environment. I think there's a lot there. I might even get rid of those two little white things here. I'm looking for things that make my eye get stuck, and I want to get rid of those because I want you to be able to engage. Whoops, helps if I pick the right layer. I want you to engage with the image, not the things around it in such a strong way. I can always add a little vignette if I needed to. And again, I do it very, very softly. I don't like a strong vignette. I don't like a vignette that you notice. I just want to make it so that you stay in the image where I want you to. And I can even lighten just a hair. That there. I can go in and play with the bird if I want to lighten the face a little bit, make him pop. But those are just some simple things. I might spend a hair more time on this or do a little sharpening, but I don't know that it needs it. So anyway, those are just a couple of thoughts. And Don said here, I like the 20x10 when including the environment or creating white space. I do too. I just think, I don't know, it's just what I love to do. And so what he's talking about 20x10 is if I went up to my ratio and I put 20 inches by 10 inches here, pretty close to how I cropped it. But that's what he's talking about. And that's a common frame size or a common print size if you're doing canvas or something like that. All right, so we are done. We're at the top of the hour and 10 minutes over. I didn't mean to keep you for the extra few minutes, but I hope that this was helpful. I'm glad to spend an extra few minutes and take questions if you want to chat with me, or unmute yourself if you want to talk. Thanks for the kind words. Oh, somebody asked, when's my webinar? Thursday night? Good question. Let me go look on Facebook while you're typing in questions. Give me a minute, and I will look that up because I don't have it right in front of me. I try to vary the times on these so that people across the country eventually will have something that works in their schedule. So I do apologize if, for those who might be listening via recording, if this happened at a time where you couldn't be here. But I will try to have these. I'll vary the times, from here on forward. Let's see here. So if I go to my group, bear with me a moment, and I go to events, and the live webinar for the Creating Compelling Images is Thursday at 5 p.m. Arizona time. But if you look at the full event, you can go and find your own time zone here. And if you live in some other time zone that I haven't listed, you can use this time zone converter as well. So that is a registration-based one. You will need to register. It's only $9. Just so you know, I'm trying to offer some things for everybody. This is my full-time job as a photographer. It's not an easy living to make, but so I'm doing a lot of things for free for folks, including supporting this group, offering my own feedback, offering free webinars. But I'm also inviting you, if you choose to some of my classes and workshops that are paid. So again, lots of stuff for free that you can do, but I'm also mentioning these other things in case they're of interest to you. And other than that, I will post this recording from tonight's session to the group. Since it's a free session, anyone can benefit from it. Let me go take a look at the chat really quickly, see what else everyone has to say. Not an easy living is an understatement. That is true. Yes, and thank you for everyone who submitted, and thank you for joining. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope this group is a wonderful tool for you. Feel free and invite others to it. I'm being very selective about who I accept. As you can see a moment ago when I showed you the group, just in the last little while, where is it here? I have just today, 75 people wanting to join. I literally sit and look at each profile, look at whether or not they've answered the questions, look at the other groups that they're in. It takes me a while to weed through all these people. I'm really trying to be selective and culture a good group of people here. If you ever notice anything that is of concern, please let me know in the group. Other than that, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and I will see you online. Take good care.